Here comes a Spider-Man. This is Spectator Spider-Man 204, and I picked this one out to review because I didn't really remember it. This is a 3-part story where Spider-Man fights Tombstone, and this is after a few years or so of Tombstone being missing from the books. When his creator left, the character disappeared for a while until this. He isn't even that interesting a character or villain. But this begins a very short run on Spectator Spider-Man by Mark Spector. He was meant to take over from Jim Tomatoes, who had gotten bumped up to Amazing Spider-Man. But Mark Spector doesn't last on the book due to various factors. And in retrospect, he has said that he is quite glad that he didn't last, because he was just shy of being involved with the Clone Saga. Mark Spector, he is an interesting writer, more so for his career than his writing. He has always been quite open about how he never really did have great success outside of the first Punisher series, and that a lot of his comics were fill-ins or the stuff that got shoved into drawers and then printed 10 years later. The one that I always remember was in the 70s. He wanted to do a Dark Knight series, but what got produced for that comic just sat around Marvel's offices until the 90s, when an editor stumbled onto it and decided to print them in Marvel Funfair. Then you have stories or runs like this here. This is a pretty good story, and Mark Spector seemed to have a promising run about to happen, but he ends up leaving the book with only this first 3-parter really being representative of what we might have gotten from him. So Larry Osborn is dead. Spoilers, Larry Osborn died in Spectator Spider-Man 200 after a memorable turn as Spider-Man's would-be arch-nemesis. And now all his friends and family and Black Cat, they have been gathered together to watch his recorded last will and testament. And in keeping with the fantastic development done with Larry under Jim Tomatoes, the video is demented. We even have a nice little panel down here with Black Cat and Mary James. But Larry Osborn, he has left Peter Parker a mysterious jewellery box, and so he flipped off as Spider-Man to check it out. He was fearing it was an explosive, but instead it just has Larry Osborn's catchphrase scrawled on a card. Plain to see where Noel Edmonds nicked all his ideas from. But while this is happening, Tombstone has returned to New Yorkland, and he is preparing to take over the mob, the major mafiosa gangs. There's always been long-running plot lines in Spider-Man books about the mob and mob wars, and that sort of thing had been put on the back burner for a few years before this, so it feels quite natural to get back to that sort of stuff now. The character drama is really good though. Spider-Man goes to visit Larry Osborn's widow and it blows up in his face. I think it was Jim Tomato's his run that this sort of stuff really peaked, and Mark Spector does a really brilliant job at continuing that side of things through into this. Tombstone, he leads his gang and they are all wearing matching suits like his, which is really embarrassing. If this was the Mafia, nobody would take them seriously. They look like a boy band. So Tombstone, he wants to do away with all the current gang leaders. This was during a time when Kingpin Man wasn't around. He had been sentenced to prison. So that made stories like this about mobsters and mob wars all the easier today without a major villain who is always required to be a head honcho of the local mafias. He robs one of their casinos and the boss man comes at him with a rocket launcher, and we have a great visual bit with him falling through the floors. Art is by John Buscema. That is Sal Buscema's brother. He has been doing the art on this series since the dawn of time. Tom, he causes an explosion which catches the attention of our friendly neighbourhood Pizza Hut. And we're not talking anchovies, Bob. So Spider-Man, he shows up to save all the persons who are trapped in the burning building that Tom blew up to get rid of the mobster boss. And he wants to hijack an ambulance to use as a getaway vehicle. But this ambulance, by enormous coincidence, is the one that is being driven by Crash Tompkins. And now Crash Tompkins, he is standing up to Tombstone. That is our cliffhanger, which will be continued into part 2. You know what? Good issue, this. There is always sorrow when you look at a comic like this, which was poised to begin a run that never really happened. And it is actually really great. I would have loved a run of this standard, but Mark Spector, this is the only story he does on the book that isn't either screwed up by editorial or hastily rewritten at the last minute when he is already out the door. This 3-parter though, great stuff. I'll rate this 7 thumbs up for now.